Steve, Shreveport, Louisiana, the great K-E-E-L. Go.
Yes, sir. I was wondering how you can be for the rule of law while at the same time complaining about regulation and the laws that the government makes. I realize we have gone over the balance and have way too many laws, especially criminal laws, but how can you complain about regulation and laws and be for the rule of law at the same time?
You're confusing things. The rule of law, I'm explaining it to you. You just asked me a question. You're confusing things.
Okay.
Supporting the rule of law doesn't mean you support every law that's passed or issued by every bureaucrat, no matter how notorious or inhumane or destructive. That's moronic. What we mean by the rule of law is the Constitution of the United States and laws that are legitimately passed by Congress. Every regulation that's issued by a bureaucrat. Well, let me put it to you this way. Where in the Constitution does the EPA have the authority to issue laws as if they've been passed by Congress? Can you point that part of the... Can you tell me where that is?
How about promote the general welfare?
The General Welfare Clause has nothing to... You know what? I'm going to have to address this when we come back. This is another liberal argument that the only part of the Constitution that matters is the General Welfare Clause, meaning all the rest of the Constitution doesn't exist. I'll deal with it when we come back.
He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
This is the final hour of the program, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Mark Levin. Welcome. Number 877-381-3811. 877-381-3811. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to take a little time on this because it comes up all the time by the left. The left who claims the Constitution was written by slaveholders, and then they claim that the General Welfare Clause empowers the central government, the federal government, to do damn near everything at once. Now, you know that's ridiculous. I'm also giving a link to you on my social sites to a letter from James Madison to another gentleman where this question comes up, and he spends a significant amount of time writing him back and explaining it to him. Not only was Madison the main, for lack of a better word, stenographer at the Constitutional Convention, not only was he, if not the most powerful force, certainly one of them at the Constitutional Convention, he was often asked about his view, once it was ratified and years later, of particular aspects of the Constitution. So this general welfare and common defense, these phrases, it came up often. And they asked Madison, and he responds in this letter. What was intended by this? Was it intended to give Congress plenary power, that is, power to do whatever it wishes to do? And in the letter, he says, in tracing the history and determining the import of the terms common defense and general welfare, as found in the text of the Constitution, he goes through the lights are furnished by the printed journal of the convention, which formed it. And without reading the entire letter, you can do it yourself. He says, look, I looked through this letter, the convention notes. I went through the journal. These terms were taken out of the Articles of Confederation. But at no time and nowhere during the Constitutional Convention did any committee of the whole, any committee in part, or any framer at the Constitutional Convention make the argument that the Common Defense and General Welfare Clause gave Congress unfettered plenary power. His point is nobody even made that case. And then he explains, as I've explained many times, but he explains in the letter, and he gives date after date after date, by the way, as he goes through this, that, in fact, we spent that summer in Philadelphia creating a government of limited enumerated powers. Different branches with specific authority. And if we went to the trouble day after day of debating and eventually settling on what the enumerated, what the specific powers of these branches would be, and we spent no time whatsoever on explaining the common defense and general welfare clauses as plenary, how can it then be said, now I'm using my language, that the entirety of the Constitution, except for this clause, is swallowed by the clause? You can't just run around and say, general welfare, we can do whatever we want. That's not what happened at the Constitutional Convention. And of course, it's counterintuitive, isn't it? How can you have a 9th Amendment and a 10th Amendment, which came later in the first Congress, if you've already given the federal government all the power imaginable to do whatever it wants to do? Now, what's interesting about the question raised by that gentleman is not so much the academic aspect of it, because it's black and white. There's no debate. But he wants the Constitution to say that under the General Welfare Clause, the federal government can do damn near whatever it wants. That's Article 1, Section 8, Clause 1. He wishes the Constitution gave the liberal Democrats the power they are now exercising, and then some. Because he also said to me, how can you support the rule of law when you oppose regulations? So when faceless bureaucrats issue regulations that are detrimental to society, that destroy farming, that destroy coal mining, that destroy oil production, that destroy trucking, that destroy transportation in general, and on and on and on. How can I possibly support the rule of law if I don't support all of that? See the point? This is a man who's arguing for his own enslavement, who has no comprehension of the Declaration of Independence, which is a document of individual liberty, of the Constitution, which is a document aimed at limiting the central federal government so that it doesn't become a national leviathan. He wants it to be everything that it's not. He doesn't even recognize his own individual liberty rights. He rejects his own sovereignty. And he's not only prepared to surrender his, he's prepared to surrender all of ours. He can't even tell you who's issuing regulations. He can't even tell you if what they're doing is politically motivated. He can't even tell you if what they're doing is destructive. His view is they're doing it, so it must be good. Now, we conservatives, we have a completely different view of individuals. We respect the rights, the liberty of the individual. Why should we be conferring so much authority and so much power on individuals to control us who are no better than we are? Can a stranger in some cubbyhole, in some massive building in Washington, D.C., know better what you should do with your life than you? Well, if you think they should, then you should go ahead and turn yourself into some kind of institution. Go ahead, turn yourself in. If you don't know how to put your pants on, if you don't know how to boil water, if you don't know how to walk from one place to another, if you need help because you don't have the confidence to do it yourself, well, we do. We do. We're Americans. That letter that Madison wrote was to Andrew Stevenson. on November 27th, 1830. And it's not just his opinion. He takes the time in what is a very long letter, and of course back then handwritten, explaining in detail which delegates to the Constitutional Convention said what, when they said it, and how it's simply not possible for the General Welfare Clause to mean what that caller said it meant. See, the problem with the left is they're really not interested in evidence, in facts, in substance. They're on a mission. And I have found this throughout my life. When I debate the Constitution with leftists, if they can't win on the text, then they twist the text. If you show them that they're twisting the text, then they talk about a living and breathing Constitution. And if you tell them, well, if it's living and breathing, then it's a political expedient, then it's not a Constitution. Then they resort to trashing the people who wrote it, who adopted it, who ratified it. So they go through this whole process, which is intellectually dishonest, which has no integrity whatsoever, in order to evade the limits that are placed on them and their heroes.